Hey everybody, it's David here with BeckerArt, and today we are doing a Bob Ross painting. I just watched the movie. I actually watched two of them, two documentaries. One was the one just talking about him and his life, and then the other one was about the greed. And both of them were very good. And like I said, last week I had taken and went to the. Hey everybody, it's David here with BeckerArt. Shoot. Today we are doing a Bob Ross painting. Hold on. Sorry about that. Always something. So we did the museum where went and saw a bunch of Bob Ross paintings, and I was really I was pretty impressed. And so we're doing this painting today, just using one of his paintings. Not the best composition on the one I picked, but I just like the mountains, and I just was going for the mountains. But I'll show you. We did something in class, and I realized I kind of didn't do it exactly right because I'm going to show you a few things. All right, so before we do that, we do have again one more. I think we have two more beers from the Dubuque Brewery, Seven Hills Brewery, and this one is called Purple Rain. Purple Rain, sour ale with grape drink. And I thought we had something close to that, didn't we, last time? And I didn't like it that much, but I must have just chose some that I didn't think I had before. But it's a sour one again, different flavor, but we'll see. So, Purple Rain. Let's see. That one's a little bit better. That one's not too bad. A little bit sour, kind of like a sweet sour. Not sure that's a good thing for a beer. But anyways, I'm going to give this one not bad. This one's not too bad. Like the other one I think was a little bit too sweet. This one there's a little bit of a hoppy taste, but it's a good one. All right, so I'm going to give this a 9. 9 paintbrush. Cheers everybody. Let's go quickly through our supplies. And our supplies are going to be the Homemade watercolors. And no transfer paper, no masking fluid. But we have our paper, which is the Stonehenge, Legion Stonehenge, and my brushes. And let's go to the website. This is my website. So if you're new here, you know that you go here to get my stuff. If you get my newsletter, you get it there too. But if you ever don't get my newsletter and you want to find it or find my newsletters, go down here and you can pick up an archive of all the newsletters. So right here, right there, you go right there and it's archived. Every single newsletter I've done, I think we're up to 400 something, or maybe, I forget. It's pretty high up there. But, we have a lot of people coming here for Bob Ross. Thanks, guys. And so with the value study here, with the value studies, we're going to be doing, look at the value study, and I'm going to show you a couple things. Like, one of the things, like, he never used a picture, he never used a photo, he just made these things up, right? He's making them up because he has a certain style where he knows how to do mountains, and so he puts the mountains, creeks, and rivers, and the trees, and he always puts a building in. A lot of times when I always thought to myself, oh, why'd you put a building in? And so if I'm looking at this, one thing, like the building, look at where the building is, and the center of interest is kind of right here. And, that's the only warm part in the whole painting too. And I know this is a little bit different. I think in the original, this is a little bit greener and stuff. And so I'm going to make it a little bit greener. But, to put your center of interest way in the corner here, and he was kind of breaking the rules on this one. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it up a little bit. I'm going to put up the building up here a little bit. And even this is kind of not the greatest composition. But what I'm going to do is, because I made my no tan, and look at this, there's lights and darks everywhere. And so you got to decide. I'm going to not copy completely like that. The sky is a little bit too much. And so what I'm going to do is a bit more of an even sky. And I'm still going to do clouds. I want to do clouds. But I'm going to make this part darker. And I'm going to make this part of the mountain. Let me get to a pointer here. This part. Come on. What are you doing here? Come on. There we go. So this part of the mountain, I'm going to make a little bit darker than the sky. And the mountains along here will be shadowed, and this will be shadowed. So there's a lot of shadow on this side, but the light parts are going to be just slightly darker than the sky will be slightly darker than the white. So it's a little bit lighter here with blue, but then we're going to have a darker shadow. And then I guess it's going to be like this, where this land here is going to be part of my dark. And so the dark kind of goes through the middle here. And that's probably the best I can do for value pattern. And of course the building is going to be right up here a little bit higher. I brought it up a little bit, not right on the corner here. I just don't think that's a good place to put it. And then I do like the reflections in water, so I may bring this out slightly too. This whole island here, I'm going to bring out just slightly so that it's a better pattern. He wasn't thinking about stuff like that, and I noticed that when I watched a couple of his shows, and he really wasn't like a teacher that told you how to do things exactly because of composition. He was just a kind of a guy that wanted you to be happy and paint and make happy little mountains and happy little trees, and that's great. You know, I mean, it really made a lot of people happy. And but we teachers now, like I'm going to tell you about like things like that, the composition, and why this could be better had the composition of the center of interest a little bit farther in. And I'll show you that in a second on the tabletop here. So here you can see I put it up a little bit higher, so it's not on the bottom here. I made it smaller, and I just brought it up in between these trees. And also, as you see, I put snow on my trees. I wanted to just show the students today about the how to put light. You can either use masking fluid before you put the snow on the trees, or I think this time I'm not going to put the snow on the trees, or I can just show you how to do it, because there's snow on the front of this stuff here. And I'm thinking, well, why would he put snow in the front stuff but nothing on this part and this part? So I'm not going to put the snow, maybe a little bit of snow on the trees, and I'll make this a little bit darker, because see how this, I started looking at this afternoon, and I was like, my values are all over the place, and see how it doesn't hang together so well, because again, the values, you gotta always worry about the values. Values are number one. Well, actually, drawing is number one, but number two, composition and your value pattern. It's so important. So let's get going here. And since we're doing this in watercolor, and Bob Ross did it in oils, it's a whole different thing. We're not going to be able to do like he has done. But there's a couple things that I was doing this afternoon that kind of made me feel like, oh, it could be done like in watercolor with textures and stuff like he had done, but not completely, because he's working wet into wet when it comes to oils, and it stays wet for a long time. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to go through here and just wet the sky. And I just noticed, sorry, 1 second, I just noticed I had my headlights on. Sorry about that. Always something, I swear to God. It's not the volume being up, or it's my lights being on. All right, so we're going to go right here, and I'm not going to go into the clouds, or into the mountains, I mean. We're just going to go right into here, wet it all. And to get those kind of clouds that he has, and he doesn't really make them very, there's like a storm clouds, and it's just too much up there. I don't want to do it that way. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue, ultramarine blue, and I'm going to make it lighter down here. I'm going to first do it smoothly. I'm first going to go in here, make it smooth, so that later on, when I'm going to do the mountains, I know that this is going to be darker, that's going to be lighter, and it's darker as it goes up. And then to get the clouds, I think I'm going to pull out this time, because I was trying to go around them. But watch, I'm going to try a different way of doing it, and let's see if this works. I might actually go right into the mountains too, right up here, but I'm just going to show you something. So I'm going to start the sky by itself, and I'm going to do a smooth surface first. And I always try to do those things a little bit different once in a while to see how things work. And when you're working your watercolors and learning and trying to learn some new things, that's when you try it, when you're practicing and you're not doing a painting for somebody that you have to make sure it's perfect. When you're doing these, you should be experimenting and trying things, because it's all about learning things. So learn and make mistakes, that's fine. You can tell I scrubbed her out here with my eraser. Anytime you erase something, afterwards you're going to get, sometimes you can ruin the paper, so you have to watch that. So see, now what I did is I'm going to go a little bit darker up here. Maybe a little bit of horizon blue and turquoise blue down here too. Let's put my blue here a little bit. And since it's all wet, and it's nice and wet, it's going to soften itself together. But then watch this. I'm going to put some clouds in here after I get this nice and soft. And if you're like a traditional watercolorist, you may even want to put masking fluid down where the whites are of the mountain, and then just go through the whole paper. Go through the whole paper. That's a lot easier in the long run. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look here for some clouds. And so I'm going to put a cloud here, and I just wiped off on a towel. I'm going to put no water in my brush. And I'm just going to pick up some clouds. I'm picking and depending on what kind of paper you have to use paper that's like, the Stonehenge is good for this because it doesn't soak in like as much as Arches does. Arches soaks in more, so the more it's soaking in, the harder it is to get back out. And if you're using hot press, it's even easier because it's like, and so I'm basically taking my brush, going to rinse it out and go back in here. I'm just going to pull out the clouds instead of, and don't use a paper towel to do this. When you use a paper towel to do this, what's happening is you're taking away the water, and the water is what makes it soft. So this afternoon what I had done is I did the same type of thing, but I went on dry paper, and so it was a little bit too crazy. And so I'm just taking it, and it's wet, so I'm taking out the clouds by just absorbing them back into the brush. And then while it's still wet, I can also put a little bit of lavender for the shading underneath the cloud. You know, so I find this an easy way of doing clouds instead of doing them while it's all dry and trying to get hard edges and softening it. This tends to be, for me, I think, more of the easier way of, you know, doing clouds. See, I just pull it out, wipe it here, pull out, and again, do not use paper towel. When you use paper towel, you get rid of the water. You can do it with paper towel, but right away add water back into the paper, because you need the water in there. Like, I'm rinsing my brush, put a little bit of water back in here so that it gets a chance to blend itself, because I still want the edges to be soft. See how I'm just like, I'm manipulating the paint. It's just pigment. I mean, it's pigment, and then some of the pigment I'm pulling back into my brush. It's just going back into the brush. And I don't want to make it so hard edged so that these clouds are too important. You know, they're not that important. I think he made them a little bit too crazy, like it's like taking away from the rest of the picture. So I want to make it a little bit less prominent, the clouds. I do want clouds in there, and so here's underneath the cloud. I put a little bit thicker paint so that stays underneath the cloud. And I can even put the blue, again, like let's say up here, I want to put a little bit more blue, the ultramarine. I can go back in there and make it a little bit darker. I can do that. Because I'm playing in water. I'm playing in water, and I'm just, it's always the same amount of water on my brush that there is on the surface. And here you can tell it got kind of dry. So rinse your brush and put a little bit of water in there. And actually, this is one time where it'd be okay to do a watermark, because a watermark will just give you those little fingers and kind of push away some of the paint. So I've known some people that do that for their clouds. They use watermarks to make their clouds push it away like that. Just a little bit lighter, because it's lighter down the bottom. Farther away, it's lighter, and as it goes up, it gets darker. Over here too, a little bit darker. And again, if it's starting to dry and you see it's not softening by itself, then put water in there. And if you get a watermark, don't worry about it. That's okay. Just try to keep things nice and evenly wet. And when I use the thicker, let's say the lavender here for the shadowing underneath there. That's a little bit too blue. Go for a little bit shadows, more of a shadow color. Magdalena, is that how you pronounce it? From Brisbane, Australia. Oh, well, welcome. Oh, thanks. Just everybody read. You know, it's in the morning, and so here it's later at night, and boy, there's a little bit of brown in here. How do we get that in there? So I'm just gonna put a little blue over that. But thanks for watching my live, and good morning in Australia. Here we have 6:30 at night. it's so neat that I can do this. And so I was telling some of my students this year, next year, I'm not doing many of the workshops, the in-person workshops as I did this year. I have to cut back a little bit. I want to do a little bit more. I got to finish my book, and I may do more Zoom classes and because I want to finish some bigger paintings and work more in my studio. And we're going to be doing some bigger workshops, like 5 days, one in Santa Fe, and but I'm not going to be doing as many smaller workshops next year. I just have too many plans of other things I have to do. So there's the sky, right? So nice and light, and as you go up, it gets darker, and nice soft edges. You know, everything was done while it's smooth. Now I'm going to go do the this is what Bob Ross would have done with with his palette knife. Well, we don't use palette knives, but we can use the side of a brush. I'm going to just use the side of the brush, make it ultramarine blue. I put a little bit of this light red in there to make it duller, like not so vibrant a color. And then what I'm going to do, I shouldn't do with this. This is a big brush. Maybe let's do it with that. This is a 101/4. This is 1/2 inch. Let's do it with the 1/2 inch. So I'm going to take that same color, ultramarine blue, a little bit of light red, make it dull down the thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of use it sideways and just hit this is cold press, so there's texture on it. So what you're going to do is just kind of like skim it across the top to get texture of the mountain, like to see how the little texture that he would get from his palette knife. Well, I can't do that with a palette knife, but I can do it with the side of my brush, where I can just go across this, get textures, get a little bit of texture here and there. And see, I'm just using the surface of the paper, which is rough, and just putting it in there. I can also do some of this darker over here. And again, this is just texture, and I will be putting a wash over that later on to get so it softens some of the edge. But I just want to get the texture, and I'm thinking it's kind of like what he had done with his palette knife, but I'm doing it with the side of my brush. Just getting a little texture, and I know it's kind of weird right now. It will look better as it goes on. I guarantee it. And so we're just gonna get the texture. Just writing some of this texture in here. I kind of skim it. It's pretty wet, but I just skim it off the side of the brush. And just again, and I'm doing this to get a texture, not to make it smooth. This is not anything about smoothing the paper. That will happen when I go over with a wash. I'm going to go over with a wash on some parts, and that'll smoothen it out. But right now I'm looking to get the texture. And I was thinking about that, like, you know, because I wonder how much of a watercolor he would be if he started watercolors. But I mean, he was an oil painter, and oil painters have certain techniques that they use for their style. And also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some dark trees up here instead of the light. There's just no trees up there. I'm going to make some dark trees to make my middle my dark. All right, so that's my texture. And now let's go in and get our values, our nice values. A little purple. And this part will be darker than the sky. Where the shadows are, I want it darker than the sky. And keeping that part white, so I'm using the white of the paper. Boy, we got a lot of people here today. Hey, everybody. I mentioned all your names, but then we take forever. So many of you today. Thanks so much. I'm getting very close to 5,000 subscribers. I hope I get it this week. I gotta take a class on how to promote my stuff too, because I'm very bad at promoting. Now see, now this is just going to be the darks. You know, this is the shadow part. This is shadow part. You get pretty dark in here. And remember, your paint is going to get 20% lighter when it dries. Your wash will get 20% lighter when it dries. So you can go nice and dark in here. Put a little bit of purple into there. And then it kind of goes here, cuts across. And see how now you don't even see the dark that I put down before. And I may have to go back in there and get that back again. And have I drawn this right? Wait a second, where is this going? Okay, that's that part. I don't have it drawn exactly like it is there, but close enough. It is a mountain. If you're off a little bit, it doesn't really matter as much it's like a face or doing that, something like that. This is the side. This is the shadow part again. If you have any questions about, you know, colors and stuff, just ask away. Ask anything. I do not care. You just ask away, because I want to answer questions. If you don't think it's a stupid question, nothing's a stupid question. It's all good. So I'm just. This is gonna be dark trees, so I can just leave that alone. I'm putting a little bit ultramarine, a little bit of violet, permanent violet, a little bit of lavender, and just getting these shadow sides of the mountain. And in a way, this composition, it's right in the middle here. It kind of comes down. I should have noticed that this afternoon too, that that's not such a good thing to do either, having it come right down to the center of the paper. Make things a little bit off-centered. It's not that important, but you know, I always try to make things better than what they are. Think about what you're painting. You know, what is it that you want to happen? Does it go back farther? Like having something in center and like that is not a good design element. Not a good way to design your paper, your composition. Okay, now this is darker than the sky too, so I hope it's not very dry. So I have to wait a second there. Make that a little bit darker. Staying away from it a little bit. It's still wet right there. I can tell because it's shiny. That's another thing. If you ever look and it's shiny, that means it's wet. So don't touch it there. And then I know this looks really dark right there now, but it's gonna lighten. Look how much that lightened. And that should be a lot darker right here, and it's still wet. So why not put a little bit of this dark in there? And this part is gonna be my darkest dark, and so that's gonna be even darker than that. And this kind of goes down here. I find that I love putting a little bit of lavender in these darks too, because the lavender floats. It's kind of opaque, but it looks really good inside when you're letting it float in the water. So this will come down, and then this whole area down here will be soft edge, like it's hazy. So what I'm gonna do, it looks very hazy, right? Because he did it with his brush where he swipes it back and forth. So for that, I will take and just make that wet. For that, I'm gonna wet it all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start wetting this area right down into this land right here, because this land is going to be darker, so don't worry about the darker parts. So I'm going to wet it so I get nice soft edges. And then this will be a little bit darker, so now I'm just going to get soft edges again. And that's what I want. I want soft edges down here, so I'm wetting it with water. Anytime you want something soft edge, you got to wet it. Very simple concept. If it's soft edged, wet it. And it'll stay nice and wet. Make it a little bit warmer blue down here. I don't have to get too much texture in there now. I can get that later too. If you do want to get texture, just put a little bit more paint in your brush, and it'll stay there a little bit more. That's almost a little bit too light a blue. Mix that with a little bit of ultramarine. This is going to be really dark right there anyways, because I'm putting trees right there. This kind of blurs in there. This goes up the hill a little bit. It's a little bit darker. This sounds like his thing. When he paints, you hear a lot of this, right? He does a lot of that with his big brush of oil paints, and he smooths things out, and then he whisks his brush against a ladder, you know, and like Bill Alexander did too. He's the one I actually watched more of than I did with Bob Ross. Bob Ross, I didn't watch as many as I did for Bill Alexander. A little bit of blue there. And have this go down a little bit. And while this is, last time I didn't do this, but I'm going to take this right into the water. I didn't do this last time, but I'm going to take this because the sky color should be down here now. From the sky, and since I have it in my brush, I'm just going to right away put this in here. So that's the sky color. This is the water. This is going to be darker, so that when it dries, I can just go over the top of that. Take some of this up in here too, because remember I said I'm going to put a little bit up in here to get that, so it's not so harsh an edge. Texture, I mean. Take something a little bit thicker. the thicker you get, the more you can like make things look more textured. Because if it's not thick, then you're not gonna get texture because it bleeds out and it gets really soft edged, which is what we get when we're painting wet in the wet. Now I want this part to be dripping in there, right? Because you see the little bit of the trees that I'm gonna have up here, and this whole land will show down in here, and I'm gonna make that green, kind of a greenish blue. So I'm gonna take some quinacridone gold and make myself a kind of blue-green. And I'm just gonna like put this right in here and let it bleed downwards, because this will be coming down. This will be the color of the land, and so I'm just gonna let that bleed downwards. I'll help it along a little bit, and if I put my paper up a little bit, it'll help it along like this. If I raise it up, it will just automatically go down. And that's why you paint on a board a lot of times, so that it will go down by itself. I'm raising it up a little bit, but see, if I raise it up real high, it'll go even more here. And that's, I'm pre-planning what my colors are going to be there. And see how now it just flakes into there a little bit. And then I'm going to make, and Bob Ross's stuff, he didn't have waves. He had a few little white things he put in there, and I'm going to put a few of those in there, but not right now. When it's dry, I'll do that. But I'm also going to put this a little bit darker down here. And here's a little bit darker. I can put a few waves in there too. And this is going to be little parts of a tree right here. So I can take a little bit of that bluish green and just put that right underneath here too. Knowing that there's going to be land up there, and this is just a reflection. This is some of the, and it's soft edge reflection, and that's, again, you can only get soft edges when you're doing wet in the wet. And so now I can dry my brush like this on my towel, and I can pull out some lines like he had done with by putting white in. I'm just going to take some out. I probably should wait a little bit though. So I'm taking a little bit of the light out. There's also a mark right here. I'll take my brush, dry it out really nicely, and then just take and pull out the paint. Pull out the paint, and that way you get like a little line, like it's, I should have done it up here too. Let's do another one. And I'm doing a bunch of them. All right, whatever. Okay, so that's how you can get some of that. I don't like this one here. That one I don't like. So I'm gonna wash that down a little bit. All right, so there you have the water, the sky, the water, and now we have to do this land up here, and it's still wet, which that's okay because I'm going to be putting a really dark there for the dark trees. So let's get this land in here right now, and I'll leave a little bit of white between this line too, and I can actually put that in with white paint too. All depends if I want to put those things in with white paint. I'm trying to think of what color I want this to be. So, okay, a little bit of blue, these greens. I put a little orange in the blue though, to make it kind of browner green. A little brownish green. Let's see what this looks like. A little bit more blue. I want it to be dull, and this is going to be part of my dark area, so, and then I'm again put trees up there too. And I think in the photograph online, it's a little bit more orange with the green, so it's a little bit more orangey. You notice how I'm getting these little feathers because it's damp up here still, and but that's okay because I'm gonna be, again, like I said, I'm gonna be putting trees up there later. Any question, guys? Let me know. I don't mind questions. Matter of fact, I love questions. It does feel like I'm talking to myself. Cheers, everybody. Cheers. Oh, look at that. Got bad. Ah, darn it. That bled into that. Remember I said it was wet? Look at how it bled in there. I can probably get rid of that later on, though. Okay, now, like I said, I'm going to leave a couple little white spots here. And don't make this as a super straight line. Like he didn't make it either. It goes back and forth here a little bit. And some parts are white because at the shoreline it hits the water, and then there's parts that'll be dark. A little bit more yellow-orange. It's a really nice, simple composition too. But Not the greatest composition of the world by putting all your stuff in the corner over here, but not bad, not too bad. There's so many different kinds of composition, it's unbelievable. And it's basically the weight that you're looking for, the different weights in the area of light and dark. Here's the train. I'm putting a little dark edge there too, and it's soft because it's wet, but that's okay. I'll do the same thing over here. Putting a little dark there where the land starts. This will be a little bit of that. All right, so more than half the painting is done. I have to go back in there and touch that up a little bit. That's where I erased too much, and then I went in there and got that little bit of. Maybe I could put smoke going out. Actually, on his painting, if you're looking at his painting too, he has a little bit of thing coming off of there, which is not a good thing to point something right to the top of that, right to the top of that mountain. I'm gonna make this land first. I'm gonna show you how he used snow. This is all snow-covered stuff up here, and so should I do it like that? I'd have to make the darker green, blue. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make that bluish green down there, and then I'm gonna add white paint to that. To get that style, I think in watercolor, if you wanted to get it to look just like that, you would use masking fluid, put that in there so you can keep the white of the paper, and then just do this outline. And I'm gonna use white. I'm gonna use white for that later. So I'm just gonna take my brush, make it nice and dark down here, and I will take white paint and put it on there to get the look of those bushes and stuff. I mean, I guess I can go around like this, so you can go around it too. But do I want something like that in the corner? No, I really don't. And so I'm just going to keep this really evenly washed. And later on, I'm going to use white paint for that. Maybe a little bit of green in here too. It can be green. Like this is grasses underneath. Because it's kind of weird because this side is kind of greenish here. I have to wait for that to dry too, so I can get this a little bit darker green. A lot of train sounds today. So here I'm getting the land. See, this is wet, so it's going to bleed into that area. I'm going to put a tree right there, so that doesn't matter. This is going to be a dark building, so I can go right into that. And again, over here, it's going to be a dark building, but over here, this is going to be really, really dark. I'm going to leave a little spot there for white, like this big white bush, or that tree right there that's kind of like frosted. He loved doing that with his fan brush too. And you can actually use a fan brush for this, but I don't have one, and I rarely use a fan brush. So I'm going to start out these pine trees with a lot of, this is going to be my darkest dark, so I'm going to go in with Prussian blue, make it as dark as I possibly can. Prussian blue, cornicum gold to get the greenish part, then a little bit of permanent violet. I'm going to make it really dark and thick, because I don't need to have water on here right now. I'm just going to go for this big one, which is right, let's see. I moved this up a little bit and took it down and made it a little bit smaller. And so this is the biggest tree right here. So I'm just going to take, and usually I make a line all the way down very lightly. And why I do this, so that's like the trunk of the tree. And then I real lightly just flick my brush back and forth. And don't make them like you're doing, building a Christmas tree where you're putting in peg, this peg is that peg, and they're all the same and going down. Many people do that. I've done many of these paint parties where people always do like that, and they do the same thing on the other side, and it's back and forth, back and forth. They never cover up the middle, because the middle has also got branches coming over. So just vary it very much. Vary it as much as you can. I'll put a little bit of orange in here too, but really, really dark. I mean, this is my darkest dark, and so go in there and just make it look uneven. Don't make these things look even, and you don't have to fill it up. A lot of these trees are not very, I'm looking at his, and his is kind of like he uses that fan brush, and well, we don't have a fan brush. You can try with a fan brush. I bet you it would work too. But it works just as fine here, like this with my brush here. I'm using my small number 8, and look at how nice that looks. Happy little tree. One happy tray there. Have you ever tried any super granulating paints? I have some from Schminke, and they are perfect for adding texture to mountains. I absolutely. That's kind of funny you mentioned that because Holbein has just come out with like I forget how many. I think, boy, I had a box. It's not right here right now, but I think it was like 7, 14, 20, about 30 different pigmented paints, and they're very cool because you're right, they're very pigmented, and so they just came out with that, and they also just came out with neon colors, watercolors, and like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to use it. I tried it in my class the other day. Yesterday, I tried them in my class, but they're just so vibrant. I don't know how to use them. They're just super, super neon. I mean, they're basically like from a black light, and I don't know how I did a waterfall with them, but it looked like Candyland because it was so vibrant. So I got to figure out what I'm going to paint with them to show you guys the scene with their neon paints. They're basically neon, very bright, like fluorescent bright. Now I'm going to add extra tree on this side, which is not in the picture, but I just felt like I want 3 instead of 2. It could be one big one small one, but I think my paper, I didn't cut it down to 11, and so I had 1 inch extra. So that's why I'm doing this part right here. And you notice how right there I'm just making it dark. I'm not even going to try to make it look like really important right there. Now this one I'm going to make it a little bit darker blue. Because you can vary off the color here too, which he didn't do. I mean, he used the same color all the way through. But yeah, and it's amazing that he did his paintings like within 25 minutes, and it takes me an hour. So he was a very fast painter. When you think I'm fast, I mean, look at Bob Ross. He was faster and pretty amazing. I mean, I was really impressed. Like I said, I was never really, when you went to school, when I wasn't going to art school and stuff, he wasn't like somebody that you follow, because it was just like he was, doing the things in malls and stuff, and you're thinking, well, it's not like real art, but it is, and it really made a lot of people happy to be able to do art like that. And then I think he is like the inventor of the paint party, basically, then too, because it's like he's the one that started those like paint party things where you go to a mall and everybody's painting the same thing, and you guide everybody around. Just that he didn't have drinks and stuff and wine and music playing like when I was doing my paint parties. So here now I'm doing a little bit of this, a little bit of shading. I'm going to put one small one over here. I put it right there. And see how I brought it out farther? Because I want my center of interest to come out a little bit. So I'm going to put one right here. And I kind of just, like I said, I always put the post in, and that's wet. I should wait. Let me just wait right there. Maybe a small one right here. If it's damp and you see it bleeding too far, that means it's damp, and it's hard to work in a damp area. So stop and let it dry. Let's see how it's spreading out because it's wet. Wet makes soft. I could put that right down into here right now too. Look, I can just put this right into the water because the water's still wet, and that's cool. I'll put a little bit of reflection in there. Same thing over here. I'll just make that all dark. All right, so let's get our. I should put some light blue in there because that's going to be a tree with snow on it. All right, so now we get into the what do you call those? Cabin, the cabin. So people were asking me how to make my browns because I don't have any brown on my palette. Well, I have this brown here, which is Middelzone brown. It's kind of a purpley brown, purpley red brown. But I like to make my browns with lavender or purple and orange. And that usually, you see how it's about the same thing? It makes me brown too. And so I'm going to make it really dark on this side, and I'm going to make a little bit of negative paint the icicles hanging off the top of the roof. And this is a cabin, a log cabin, so he made little stripes. He always did it with his palette knife, but we have watercolor, so no palette knife. And so they'll make that side a little bit darker, and then make this side more orange on the front, like because the light's coming this way, right? So make this side a little bit lighter. And I'm going to leave some of the lights hitting on top of the ones. And there's also going to be a door in there. It would be really dark. So a little bit lighter. And it's kind of dry. I didn't do it very wet so that I can get some texture. Anytime you want texture, do it on dry paper and go across quickly. You'll get texture. And that's not really dark enough. And then there's going to be I'm going to put a little fence right here. Maybe a little walkway. I still think you are faster than Bob Ross if you consider that watercolor is a transparent medium and so fluid. Yeah, well, half hour, but you know, if you watch him, it's pretty amazing how fast he does go. He's like it's just like he just punches it in there. It's like boom, 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 that area is done. Boom, boom, another area is done. It just keeps on going. Here, I'm gonna make this part really dark now over here. Just a little bit more detail now. I'm in detail part now, detail stage. And I'm just going to put some darks back there because there's shadows going this way, right? So I'm just going to put that shadow in there. And then also, like, I am pretty fast with watercolor as to how fast you should be going and stuff. But again, never make that an important thing. Don't worry about how fast you're going. Really, I've always told people, sometimes people take a real long time, some people take a lot less time. Let it be whatever time it takes you for you to do whatever you're doing the wash. You know how to do the washes. Some people are slower on it, some people are faster on it. I'm making this door a little bit red now, burgundy, so I'm just going to make that a little bit lighter and darker. Underneath the eave, I'm going to put some purple, like underneath here. Wet it a little bit. All right, and so let's get some blue or some bluish lavender for shadowing on this side of the roof right here. I can throw some shadows across the top here too. Which I think, you know, he did it really fast with oils thick, and so mine is going to look a little bit more detailed, you know, because it's just watercolor. I get a little bit more detail in my work than he could. I should put a window in there, and so when it's dry, I'm maybe going to rub it out a window, or just put white paint on there. Like I said, I am going to add white paint, and so if you didn't want to add white paint, you would do this, what I'm doing now, at first, and you put that with masking fluid. So before we do the white paint, and that's going to be the last thing I do, I want to go back into the mountains and get more detail. So I'm going to go in and really work the mountains so they have like a lot of nice details in there, like the texture and stuff, because he get it really fast with his brush, with his palette knife, but I can't kind of get that as much with a brush as he could with the palette knife. And over here, look at all these nice darks in here. Well, that's the tree right there, so I don't get too crazy with that. Maybe over here I'll get some texture. I'm using my, just a little bit darker, a little bit more texture in spots. Like right here, there's a little bit of a darkness through here. I like to rub that a little bit. Get texture by dotting it. Here, same thing, I can put little dots. And this is a good time to get really nervous. Like if you're in a shaky, look how shaky I am. If you're really shaky like this, then go in here and just go like this, see? Go like this. And then just kind of like hit it. Just kind of pretend like you're really nervous. And just boom, 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 boom. Tap down with your finger a little bit. It's just so that it doesn't look so, you know, perfect. And don't dot. Nobody ever dot. Don't put a dot. That doesn't look right because then it looks like stars. And this is supposed to be texture. A little bit darker texture in some spots. Some parts are even black almost. They're like really, really dark. On the edge there's a little bit here and there. This looks kind of blurry here and I want to keep it that way. So that's cool. See, it looks a little bit more, and then over here there's some dark in there. even though parts of this should look like it's farther back, so I don't want to get too contrasty. The less contrast, the farther it looks like it goes away. But I can put the same value, but make them hard edged, and I can make it look textury by getting nervous here. See how nervous? Boom, boom, boom. Texture. All right, let's put these trees over here. Now look at how light these got, and that was supposed to be my darkest darks, and so that tree's got to get darker, and so I'm gonna really right away put that in there because that got way too light. I want the contrast to be right here because this is my center of interest, this whole area. So go back into this area a little bit and make just things a little bit darker. It's still wet, and so I can go right into the wetness. It'll still float a little bit. I'm try to put it a little, just a lot darker. All right, so less dark over here, but I do want to put some pine trees back here. And I'm going to make them a little bit more blue and a little bit of orange so that dulls them down a little bit. And so I'm just going to go up here, and since this is like the shape of a pine tree, I can just tap down like this too. I'm not going to make them really fine detailed. I just want to make them, I can flick upwards a little bit. And I know he does not have this. This is not in his painting, but I felt it needs a dark on this side. So you do what you feel is, what you feel is better for your composition. I just felt that it would be better to have a little forest or something. It seems kind of empty over here. Instead, I'll bring your eye and makes it come back this way. And I can make it smaller and smaller as it goes down here. I can make a little trunk of the trees go up here and put a little bit dark on, like it's shadowed underneath the trunks. And again, he never taught things like composition and stuff, but the thirds and stuff like that. But again, it was not, he wasn't teaching people that wanted to do art so much as like go to an art school or something. He was teaching to get everybody to do, anybody and everybody to do the painting. And that, I admire that a lot. Okay, let's get some darks in the bottom here. All right, how much time we have? Oh, yeah, plenty of time. So we have the top here, and let me just show you up here. Is that dry now? No, it's still a little wet. But see that little part right there? I'm gonna have to rub that a little bit because it was damp and it bled in there. But so now over here, we're gonna go into a white paint, and I should have brought some a tube of white paint. Oh well. My white here is kind of not the best, and I'm kind of running out. And it's always when you're using white, it's always good to get a new squirt in instead of going from the hard. This is the white doesn't get, well, it still works, but a lot of times it's really dirty. It could be just a little bit of dirty, and it's still not gonna be pure white. And so, in something like this, you want to go pure white. Let me see if I have a fan brush in here. 1 second. That'd be kind of fun to see if I have a fan brush. Oh, I do. I have a little fan brush here. This is more of a bristle brush. But let's see what happens. That's what he used for doing these things, and so I'm gonna take my white, and this is like gouache then, because I'm using white, but that's okay. I'm gonna see what kind of let's do this one up here. I should practice this. I always tell my students practice something first, and I can't do it in here. Let's try it on here. Let's see if I go like this. All right, that's enough. Let's see if I can do this tree up here. I'm just going to tap it down. So I'm using pure white, basically, thick, and so that's going to cover up. It's not fluidy. It's supposed to be textury, and that's what I'm trying to get, like he had gotten, and that's what he used. I know when you get these things. Now I'm not going to. Oh, I don't know. Let's try one right here. So I'm just putting in, you know, like he would do. He would just put in these whites first in here, and then what I'll do is I'll take the watercolor and make it blue on the bottom, so that I soften it and make the dark areas, the parts that are away from the light. This I should have tested first and how I would do this. So this is pretty much I'm going along and testing it with you guys. So basically what it is bushes. He's put bushes in there, and so I'm going to make it look a little bit more like trees and bushes here. Kind of fun. It sounds like it is kind of work when he always hits the canvas. You know, that's like I always say, when you get a new brush or something, you try something, you know, take a scrap piece of paper and see what that brush can do. Now it's all just white, right? And so now I'm going to go in and take some of the colors, the blue, like the parts of the white that would be in shadow, and then shadow it up a little bit with the same colors. I mean with a darker bluish color. Because there will be a shadow side, you know, even though it's white, there will be a shadow side to it. And there would also be textury. Well, it looks like his work, doesn't it? And this is opaque now, so this is gouache. This is kind of like working with gouache. Even though I'm not working with gouache, I'm working with watercolor, but I'm putting white into my watercolor, making and turning it into gouache. There's that. See how you need to have two whites? You need one that's fresh and one that's not fresh. Just so interesting watching you paint. So much to learn. Thank you, Anne. Yeah, I really thought these need to be balanced out. Because that'll balance out. They're a little bit lighter, so they balance it. They'll push that back. This comes forward. And I kind of like this. I really like this, the white up here. It's like a little bit, you know, it's so funny when you look at his work. It's really kind of neat. It's pretty fascinating how he made it look like this foliage, because out in nature, it's like tons of weeds and stuff everywhere, and it's kind of like that, right? It's weeds everywhere. Now, I'm not sure why this would look like this, and this looks like this, and none of this would be back there. That's kind of weird. I mean, but, you know, whatever. You can do whatever you want, because he's the artist, so you do whatever you want. And I'll put a little bit of snow back here, so that it kind of has a little bit of that over there. And then, because I need some of this color over here, so this is like the orange and green I said. Remember I used orange and green? So for that, I'm just going to put that in there, and now work around the white, and negative paint. Because you can negative paint around the thicker stuff too. Like the grass is going through here. And actually this white is a little bit too white right there. Thanks, guys. That was something different. It's just supposed to be weeds. It's supposed to be kind of like weedy, and maybe we have to put some like trunks in there, like branches. I don't want to get too carried away in here because it is still just the foreground, and it's away from the center of interest. But these are supposed to be like bushes. Like he makes them out to be like bushes. And so we'll put a couple of the branches going up. And it doesn't look that different from, you know, I mean, it is opaque, but it doesn't feel out of place. You know, a lot of times I see people using gouache and it feels kind of out of place because there's nothing else anywhere, but it's put on, left alone, and it's fine. Greener here. Put a couple of trunks here. Trunks are the trees. blue through here. I think this is a little bit weird up here. Tap my finger to dull it down a little bit. You guys see anything else? I think that's pretty close. Oh, I was gonna put the white, I was gonna use a little bit of white window. Just gonna put a like window right here. Just make it nice and white. Maybe I'll put 2 windows in. Maybe the door has a window. And if it was Switzerland, we'd have some, you know, all the boxes on there, and the things would be hanging way over, because they're things are way over. Thank you, Tina, for asking everybody to hit the like button. And let's use a little bit more white. Oh, I forgot that tree. We gotta do one more tree, because that looks like it's not done. One tree. Hold on. And then we're done. One more tree. A nice dark tree here. Now it's dry. It's not going to bleed. You know, and also every one of his paintings is online on YouTube. You can go on YouTube here and see every one of his paintings that he did in every season. And every painting also, there's a website called something like 2inchbrushsomething.com or something. Has every one of his painting videos too. So you want to see what he does, or just copy some of the paintings. Like if you don't like this one, go find another one. There's so many out there. And just go find another one that you like, maybe a little bit better than this one. All right, I think that's it, guys. Let me put the little cross on the window. So there you have a Bob Ross painting, and one more thing. We still have time, right? Yeah, 3 minutes. So remember I said you can rub out, like if there's a wave here, I can just rub it out like this. Let's just take a damp brush and just rub it. And just rub the paper a little bit and pull out some of the paint. Get a little bit of a line right there. You got one right here. All right, so that one worked out a little bit better than my afternoon one. Oh, I was going to show you how to do this one here too. So here I'm just going to rub this a little bit, tickle it. I'm just going to tickle it to get it back to floaty, kind of float it a little bit, and then just rub it into rub the pigment around until you feel like you get it to be looking nice and clean. Like what happened here was I also had erased there, so you really got to watch what kind of paper you're using. Better papers are easier to fix stuff on, and when that's dry, I will go back in and it'll be perfect. All right, guys, so I think that's about it. Let me see what it is this afternoon, and we'll compare. So here's the painting now, and here's the painting this afternoon. Now look at the composition between the value pattern. Isn't that different? This one was very light. I wasn't looking at it that much, and by putting all the snow on the trees also, it takes away from the composition, because this is more high key and my darks are all over the place and not combined together. So shows you how this one is a little bit, the key thing was to have the lights going, or the darks going right down the middle here, you know, and so held together much better when it comes to the composition. So there you have it. Let me see what you do, guys, okay? Post them. I don't mind it when you post them. If you ask questions afterwards, we'd love to see them. And if you do a different one, that's fine too. Trees at the water edge. Oh, that one. Were you going to fix the peak? All right. So I did all those. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks so much. And again, please try it. And if you do, let us see it. We'd love to see it on my Facebook page, or you know, any way you can get it to me. I would love to see it. All right, so guys, we'll see you hopefully on Sunday morning. I'm not sure what I'm painting usually. I'm always practicing something, but we'll see you then. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.